Let's go.
Hey everyone and welcome to my channel. Today I'm going to talk about the produced series and specifically the victims of MNET's manipulation. In no way am I trying to justify their actions, but I was curious as to how far the victims would have actually made it and whether they would actually make the final lineup. The plan was to go through each season and revisit each victim's performance and analyze my thoughts on whether they would have ultimately had a chance. Big disclaimer. This analysis won't be solely based on talent alone. If we have Sohae beating Changha in votes for dance position, then it shows that many factors may come into play. Also, disclaimer number 2. Despite some of these contestants potentially not making it into the lineup, in my perspective, it doesn't mean that I'm right. Any of these contestants could have had an EXID moment and could have gotten some virality to boost their image, but didn't get the opportunity because they were unfairly eliminated. Also, MNET's manipulation goes beyond just vote manipulation, as screen time and favoritism based on talent or visuals may boost a contestant's popularity. So this analysis is based on the information out there that I have relatively accepted as partial truth, which I will try to elaborate on. Without further ado, let's get into the video. Season 1 was said to be slightly rigged in comparison to the other 3 seasons. From what is known, producing director An stated that votes were rigged in favor of trainees from the first 2 seasons for contestants wanting to leave the program. Whether you choose to believe him is up to you, but I would say that sounds unlikely. Considering many contestants have quit the show within the first round, it would make no sense as to why they would need to be rigged out of the show. I have another point for why it doesn't make sense, but it relates more to season 2, so I will make it there. Another report mentioned that rankings for one trainee meant that she would have debuted in I.O.I, but was swapped out. However, the November 2020 release of all the victims show that there was no contestants impacted in the final round of votings for the first season. Considering the amount of sympathy and support they could have gotten, it would be weird to omit this trainee out. As well as that, this report is the only one to talk about this mysterious contestant who was rigged out of I.O.I. Every other report always mentions just the 12 in the November 2020 release, so I will take this as a false report. However, this doesn't mean there was no vote manipulation, as MBK would receive a fine for vote manipulation for raising the rankings of the 3 trainees in the third and final rounds of voting. However, the courts ruled that the voting manipulation had limited effect on the actual rankings and it did not affect the final lineup. So from that, my perspective would be that the 2 contestants I would recognize as victims are Kim Suhyun and Seo Hyelin in the first round of voting. I feel like unfortunately Kim Suhyun would not have made it into the final lineup. Her I Don't Know by A Pink team won the first round and explains a bit as to how she was able to move on to the next round. Not saying she wouldn't have made it without winning, but there was no video available for her audition indicating she would have been a background character if she moved on. She is really talented, as we can see almost a year later, where she would make it into the final lineup of the girls' team for Mix 9. However, she was more of a standout within Mix 9 for many reasons, whereas MNET decided she wasn't worthy to highlight, and thus shows the importance of screen time. However, she is doing well for herself right now, as she has debuted in Billy, and with the virality of Suki, they have generated more eyes to establish themselves. It seems like they just need one more solid hit to elevate their status within the K-pop competition. I feel like Seo Hyelin would have not made it into the final lineup as well. Just her visuals alone helped her rank 25th in the first episode, and thus she had potential to make it far. She was also on the losing team during the first round and showed that she never got any extra benefits from performing, and thus is a good sign she had a good initial fan base of votes. However, she was another contestant without an audition video, so I could see her teetering on whether she would actually get screen time just based on her visuals. However, she didn't get much of a chance to show any standout singing, rapping, or dancing, and thus just visuals alone would get her so far before other viewers would notice other contestants who had more to give in certain areas. As of recently, she had gone into content creation as a YouTuber. However, her last video was 4 months ago and suggests she may have just decided to live a normal life or was just on a break. Season 2 stepped up the rigging just a little. Once again, the first round included manipulation. However, the final round also included a confirmed manipulation too. Ahn stated that he swapped rankings for one trainee who was supposed to debut in 101. Once again, PD Ahn said that his manipulation was in favor of the trainees. But this was my second point. Why would someone who has made it to the finale want to be manipulated out if they have gone through so much? From what has been said, the living and working conditions were a nightmare. So to give up at the very end sounds sus. Regardless, this season seems clear in that we have Seong Hyunwoo in the first round and Kang Dongho in the final round as the victims. I don't think Seong Hyunwoo would have made it into the final lineup. Based on his audition and Call Me Maybe performance, the comments indicate that he was consistently overshadowed as people rooted for others. His initial ranking on the first episode placed him in the middle of the pack, and so it was very 50-50 with him. Similar to Kim Suhyun, his group won the first round battle and might indicate how he was able to move on to the next round. The significance of this benefit, I wouldn't know, but he was for sure never a clear frontrunner for MNET. Currently, he's finally left his company to start fresh. After debuting in Limitless in 2019, they were immediately thrown into some form of hiatus, where we would gradually see all members leave one by one. He has still been active on IG, but recently, after a long lawsuit battle, he has been able to terminate his contract, and all I can say is I'm wishing him the best. I mean, there is not much to say. Ahn stated that he swapped a ranking for one trainee who was supposed to debut in 101, and he's the only one in the final round to be affected by MNET's vote manipulation. This likely means he was supposed to debut in 101, potentially with his groupmate Hwang Min-hyun, and could have helped his group post 101. Fortunately, Produce Clout did wonders for New East, as they were able to garner their first win when they formed a Min-hyun-less group called New East W, as well as once Min-hyun returned. They maintained a steady fan base before disbanding in 2022. He is currently a soloist, making his debut with No Rules in late 2022. Produce 48 was up there in manipulation. In November 2019, the police revealed that the final rankings of the top 20 trainees during Produce 48 had already been predetermined before the final performance were recorded and broadcasted. As well as that, a meeting before the live finale of Produce 48 was set up to choose the I.O.I final 12 members. From the reveal of victims, it is thus believed that not as much vote manipulation occurred until the end. So from the information given, we have Han Chowon and Gaeun as the victims in the final round. It was revealed that Han Chowon had ranked 6th, meaning she would have actually debuted in I.O.I. Despite eventually debuting in Lightsum in 2021, she would have benefited more from being in I.O.I in order to maintain notoriety. The 3-year gap between Produce 48 and debuting hurt her a little, as Lightsum have not managed to do well as they continue to drop in sales despite being in a relatively mid-sized company with notable acts like G-Idol. She was well known on Produce 48 through her Halbaya performance, her amazing vocals in her Don't Know You group, and even her rapping in Rumor, which became a hit in itself. And thus, being in I.O.I would have created more fresh hype and more residual fame for Lightsum. Lightsum only made one comeback last year, and with the departure of 2 members, all I can say is justice for Madewa. It was revealed that Gaeun had actually ranked 5th, meaning she would have also debuted in I.O.I. This would have been the best opportunity for her as she was on the older side and thus became her final opportunity to become an idol. Post I.O.I would have then done her wonders with her idol career, as her 1 year age difference between Eunbi meant that Gaeun could have received the I.O.I clout to debut solo, or even debut with Ha Yeonjun in a playlist girl group, or even make the final lineup of a Le Seraphim-esque group, as HYBE would still have brought out major shares for Pledis. Unfortunately, the realities was that she was left in the Pledis dungeon post-Produce 48 and then would ultimately leave Pledis. Currently, she's under High Entertainment with activities only in acting at the moment. Produce X 101 followed the same manipulation as Produce 48 with extra manipulation, as the first and third round would include manipulation. The final rankings of the top 20 trainees had also been predetermined, as a meeting 2 days before the live finale determined the final 11 members. This was peak manipulation, which coincidentally also became the catalyst of viewers filing an investigation to be done on MNET. From the information found, we have Anzardi Timothee in the first round, Kookheon and Jinwoo in this third round, and Keum Donghyun, Jinhyuk, and Koo Jungmo in the final round, making the most victims in one season. I don't think Anzardi Timothee would have made it into the final lineup. Besides his foreigner appearance being half Korean, there was nothing that stood out about him. His ranking was never amazing, and his skills didn't stand out enough to make much noise. His team also won, and thus may be one factor as to how he moved on to the next round, but I feel like he would have been eliminated eventually. He's doing well for himself though, as he's now signed under Esteem Entertainment, which is known to have lots of models, which is what he's doing at the moment. He has also not completely ruled out idol life, as he competed in another survival program called Extreme Debut Wild Idol, but did not make it that far. However, regardless of whether he becomes an idol, he fortunately has his modeling career to fall back on. Baby, please have mercy on me. Take it easy on my heart. I think that Kookheon would have either just barely made it or been short of making it into the final lineup. He had been doing well for himself throughout the whole show, as he had never been past rank 30. The only thing is that he had just not had a real standout moment to boost him into the lineup rankings during the show. Thus, it would have been hard to know whether finale votes would have pushed him enough to debut completely. Of all the contestants, I would say he's the biggest what if. Currently, he's all over the place. His initial group would disband almost right after Produce. He also got placed in a duo that disbanded within a year and a bit, debuted solo with no further comebacks, competed in another survival program with no luck, and is now venturing into Thai pop in 2022. Despite there not being one consistent activity, it is great to see that he's able to venture into many different things, and hopefully he finds what he wants to do. I think that Jinwoo could have made it into the final lineup. He had enough audience support that he would consistently rank high. It is clear that he had something that people saw that made him likable and votable. His initial impression was amazing as well, as he ranked 10th on the first episode. He would then garner more attention with his To My Youth performance, ranking 4th from just online votes. It is clear that he was in the running and could have potentially made it into the final lineup if he knew he was in the finale and showed his final performance like it was his last. If he were to make it in, this would have helped boost up his current group of Ghost 9 at a faster rate. Currently building slow momentum despite losing 2 members, their last comeback was in April 2022, almost a full year, and thus indicates a signs of trouble for the group. It is unclear what will happen to them at the moment, but label mate Park Ji-eun, who was a former 101 member, also has only had 1 comeback too. The only difference is that he has other opportunities as an actor, whereas Ghost 9 are just the group itself. It is worth noting that the group will also be performing in another survival program, so hopefully they can shed more light to the group. It was revealed that Keum Donghyun would have ranked 8th and thus would have made it into X1. He has currently made a name for himself debuting in EPEX in 2021. They've been doing well for themselves domestically and thus could have just used the X1 cloud to build more momentum. In saying that, EPEX is under C9 Entertainment, which is home to Six, which has Bae Jin-young, who also debuted in Wannaone. Six has around the same level of success in Korea as EPEX, so I don't know if it truly would have built more momentum considering Bae Jin-young debuted in a produced group. However, just being an X1 would have potentially given Donghyun more opportunities for solo activities. Regardless, Donghyun and EPEX are doing well for themselves as they continue to build more momentum. I got that crack, I just don't know what to do. It was revealed that Jinhyuk would have ranked 7th and would have made it into X1, potentially alongside his group mate Kim Woo-seok. It is likely that even still being an X1, he would have followed the same path as he is on now, as both an idol and an actor. Both Kim Woo-seok and him have been inactive from the original group Uptension and instead focus more on solo work. Thus, debuting in X1 would have given him more of a leg up to boost his status within the acting and idol world. He is still doing well for himself considering how unknown he was before Produce, and thus he just may continue to branch out to establish himself alone. It was revealed that Koo Jungmo would have made it into X1 and ranked 6th position, potentially alongside his label mates Kang Minhee and Seong Hyunwoo. This would have been the most loaded post-produced group if all of them actually made it into the final lineup, as we don't know the 3 contestants who were actually rigged into X1. Koo Jungmo has done well for himself as he debuted with 2 former X1 members in Starship's new boy group Gravity with Break All the Rules. They have built good momentum and are steadily growing domestically. Once again, if all 3 of them rightfully made it into X1, Gravity would have been one of the most explosive debuts, and thus depending on how they would have proceeded, it would have been a good few initial years before they would have to develop the Gravity image. Final thoughts. Of the total 12 victims, Chowon, Gaeun, Keum Donghyun, Jinhyuk, and Koo Jungmo have been confirmed by the courts that they would have made it into the final lineups. I believe that Kang Dongho and Jinwoo would have made it into the final lineups, but vote manipulation ruined their chances. Kim Kookheon would have been my big 50-50 of potentially making it in, and Kim Suhyun, Seo Hyelin, Seong Hyunwoo, and Anzardi Timothee would have passed the initial rounds but would have been eventually eliminated. Does this mean it was right to manipulate the votes even though I believe 4 of them wouldn't have made it far? No. And once again, you never know whether they just needed the next performance to have their shining moment to become a competing contestant. It is interesting to see where they are all now, with most of them continuing idol life in some form with varying successes. However, there have been others who have branched out into different fields from acting to modeling. I will link down their socials and YouTube channels, so make sure to check them out and see what they're doing now. But yeah, that's it for the video. Thanks for watching and let me know what you think about my reasonings and whether you agree with it. I've just recently made a Twitter account, so make sure to follow me there if you want another avenue to interact with me. Please like and subscribe and I'll see you tomorrow. See you tomorrow. And I'll see you in the next video. Bye.